Hey guys, what's up? PBM here. Today I'm going to be talking about Pridwen. This will be a guide on how good the item is, when to use it, what gods it's good on, where you can build it in your 6 item support build, and just kind of covering everything the item does. This is one of the new Arthurian items released in the latest mid-season patch, and I've gotten to play with it for a few days now, so I feel like I have a pretty solid opinion on what I think of it and just how good it is. So we're going to kind of get into it a little bit. First off, we'll just talk about what the item does and how it compares to the other Arthurian items. So it builds out of Gem of Fate, 900 gold for 10% CDR, a pretty expensive starter item. So you don't really want to rush any of these super early, but anyways, Pridwen is unique in that it is the only Arthurian item that can be built by every single class. This is, of course, really nice because in support, you have pretty much every class can be played in the support role. Hunters are the one that's like, most on the fringe there, and there's not many hunters that work in support, but, mages, you have stuff like Nox, stuff like Baron, Afro, Hell, assassins, you have things like Naja or Serked or Fenrir, and then, of course, warriors and guardians have been good in support pretty much forever, so just off the bat, being able to build it on every single class makes it the perfect Arthurian item for supports. You can pretty much count on it fitting into every single one of your builds. Also, 2400 gold, the cheapest of the Arthurian items, so really easy to build early on if you want to. A quick power spike later in the game if you prefer to do that. Just a really cost-efficient item, which is great for support because obviously you're not going to be getting a lot of solo farm during the game, and you're not really going to be getting into your items as quickly as, say, a carry roll would. So, anyways, we'll talk about what the item does. Pridwen, 20% CDR, 40 physical protection, 40 magical protection, which is pretty good. 80 total procs for an item is really solid. And then the passive. When your ultimate ability has finished casting, which is a very important distinction, the finished, we'll talk about that in a second, you gain a shield equal to your protections for 5 seconds. When destroyed, either by timing out or being depleted, it explodes and deals magical damage. Magical damage is also important, equal to 50% of the shield's initial health, and slows targets by 25% for 3 seconds. This can only occur once every 45 seconds. Okay, so we'll kind of break down that passive a little bit part by part because there's a lot of things in there. So first off, when your ultimate finished casting. Okay, this is very different depending on the character, and this is really important for you to know before you build Pridwen. So, for example, on a character like Terra, the second you press 4, that is the cast time of your ult. The heal over time, the stones that go around the enemies, that's just the duration of the effects of your ult, but the actual cast is like when she does her little spinner or whatever, and she puts her ult on everybody. That's when you'll gain this effect, so pretty much instantly. Whereas another character like Fafnir, your ultimate is technically being casted the entire time you're in dragon form. So you won't actually get this effect until you deform, which is obviously not when you want it. Fafnir really wants to just transform, and then that's when he wants to win the fight. He wants to get in there, get his stuns out, buff his team. So not the greatest interaction on him. A couple other gods. I don't know if there's anything that has that crazy of a time. I'm actually not sure what it does with Jorm. Ares is another good example. Ares is kind of known for when he tries to ult, you can kind of blow him up because he's really slow moving backwards while he's trying to pull people. He does not get the shield until he finishes his casting and pulls enemies, so he can still be blown up during that. So it doesn't really solve that problem. So yeah, just you got to be aware of everything it can do. Also on the item is a 45-second internal cooldown, so for most characters, anytime you use your 4 or your ult, I guess I shouldn't say 4, anytime you use your ult, it'll be up. The item will pretty much be up every single time. The exception to this will be stance switchers. So if you play something like Hell Support or if you play Ardio, you're going to have to track when you want to cast your stance switch a little bit more carefully, because you don't want to just, for example, stance switch out of base to Ardio dash out of base, and then a team fight happens around Gold Fury or wherever you were running to, and then you don't have that proc. So just be aware of that. So anyways, there's a lot of characters that don't get this effect at the time they want it. So Fafnir, I would say, is the best example where it kind of makes the item bad on Fafnir because you're just like, you want to win the fight before you transform, and you don't want to just transform and then get out of your form just to get this item effect and lose your entire dragon form. So I wouldn't build it on characters like Fafnir. Other than that, we'll just move on. The shield being equal to your protections, this is adding your magical and your physical protection, okay? So if I have 200 physical prot and 200 magical prot, I'm getting a shield for 400 health, okay? So it's a huge shield. And then obviously if you get later into the game, if you have other effects on you, some characters have built-in prot increase, so things like, you know, Fafnir passive. I mean, so many tanks have this. Fafnir passive, Ares bolster, RDO bear form 2 will give you a protection buff, 30 of each prots. You know, Bacchus chug gives you prots. Just on and on and on. There's a lot of tanks that get in-kit protection bonuses. Something like Sylvanas heal will also give you a buff when you do that. So if you can Sylvanas heal, and then you're buffing how much health you'll get through Pridwen. So that's a really big thing on these supports, is that the item that they want to build is also working really well with your kit. Your kit is also going to buff this item just for the health shield, and on top of that, it's also going to buff the damage that the item will do, because it's 50% of what the shield was. So again, in the scenario where you have 200 of each prots, your shield is going to be 400 health, but your damage, your explosion, is going to be 200 health. It's also worth noting that this is magical damage. And a reason this is important is because if you're playing warrior supports or assassin supports, and maybe your team has like 4 physical, you're actually getting split damage in your kit, essentially, because you're doing some magical damage to them as well. So it makes it a little bit harder for the enemies to itemize for you. There's also some characters that only get buffs to their physical protection, like in their kit. And the bigger thing is that physical protection on every single class in the game scales much better than magical protection does. So this will actually do way more damage than it would have if it was physical. So that's really important to know as well. And then a 25% slow for 3 seconds when this goes off. Again, just a little bit of bonus damage. You can see this hit from, you know, if you have 300 of each protections, you're hitting people for 300 in a pretty big radius that, you know, it's just free damage, right? So damage is never bad. And then because you're going to be building this on support characters or just tanks in general, you're already going to likely have a good bit of CC in your kit. To add a 25% 3-second slow to that is just really nice. So this item is pretty much hitting every checkbox that you want as a support. It's giving you cooldown, it's giving you prots, it's effectively giving you health, and it's giving you CC. It's just kind of the full kit here. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, you get what I mean. It just does everything for you. So really good item, super effective on most characters. Like I said, something like Fafnir, you might not want it on, but for pretty much every other support god, this is a super effective item. So let's talk about when you would build it. So because it's cheap, something you'll notice about this item compared to something like Staff of Mirrodin is that you're going to see it picked up a lot earlier in people's builds than the other Arthurian items. So for example, we'll just go through a normal support build. You're going to start with Guardian's Blessing, of course, and then you're going to go straight into boots. That'll be either, you know, Shoes of Focus or Reinforced Shoes most games. If you're a magical god, I think just going Shoes of Focus is normally better than Traveler's Shoes. And you could go Shoes of the Magi's if you're ahead. I'm going to focus on these 2 boots because these are the ones that kind of have synergy with Pridwen the most. The reason for that is if you go Shoes of Focus and Pridwen, you're already at 30% CDR for 4,000 gold, give or take, a little bit less than 4,000 gold, which is super stat efficient CDR for a support. You normally won't get that any other way. Breastplate of Valor is really the only other item that would even get you close to that mark, and Breastplate of Valor is more of a solo lane item. Supports really want health and defense in their item, so you can't really build that as much, and it doesn't help your team. So 30% CDR from Pridwen and Shoes of Focus, super good. It also is buffing your damage a lot because you're getting 55 power from the Shoes of Focus, and Pridwen is also giving you damage because of the proc. So definitely a lot to work with there. Pen boots, actually, Shoes of Magi, will actually help as well because the 10 magical penetration will apply to the Pridwen proc because it's magical damage. So you're going to make that proc just kind of cut through the enemy a little bit more and amplify that damage even more. That would obviously work with Voidstone as well, anything like that. So, and then Reinforced Shoes are a little bit different, where instead of focusing on the damage or the CDR, the benefit you get here is that if you can easily stack up the passive of these boots, say you're against a character with a lot of dot damage, like an Ares or something like that, you're going to get these 21 of each prots pretty quickly into a team fight. And if you let these boots stack and then you ult with Pridwen, you're going to get 42 extra health on your shield, which is really big. 21 extra damage, just a nice little boost. So I would recommend building any of these boots with Pridwen. I think the two best are Shoes of Focused and Reinforced Shoes, but you really can't go wrong with any. So anyways, you're going to go Guardian's Blessing. You're going to go whatever boots option you think is going to fit you best that game or on that character. And then you're going to go straight into Gauntlet of Thebes. So we'll cover Gauntlet a little bit. I've gotten a lot of questions on stream of when to build Gauntlet of Thebes. Is it good every game? You know, all this type of stuff. So in my opinion, I think Gauntlet of Thebes is the go-to cookie cutter first item support item that you want to go pretty much every single game. You can decide to go for something like Stone of Binding if you get really far ahead. Maybe you get a kill in lane and you want to go to just try to like snowball and do damage early game. That's completely fine. But for most games, if the game is either even or whatever, you're going to want to go Gauntlet of Thebes. You do have to be a little bit careful because you don't have procs early game, but 300 health is still a lot of health early. You can continue stacking this item up. You only need like 20 to 30 stacks for it to really be a cost-efficient item. And then obviously when you finish it, this is the most stat-efficient defense item in the game. 60 of each protections, 300 health is just absolutely insane, and you're giving your team an aura. It's doing a lot of things that you want to do, and it will synergize really well with Pridwen, which is what we're going to cover. So when you finish stacking this, you're getting 60 of each prots. That's 120 total prots. So you are putting another 120 health onto your Pridwen, and you're putting 60 damage onto the proc as well. So right after this, I would recommend going Pridwen. You can go Pridwen as early as third item in pretty much every single support build, and it'll be great. You'll have 20% CDR, you'll have a ton of prots. It's effectively giving you health on this item as well because of the proc. It's giving you damage, it's giving you CC, it's doing everything for you. This is what I would say is the meta support build that you should try to get almost every single game. Again, be careful stacking your Thebes, be careful of what boots option you pick because these will shape your early game. But then once you're out of that early game and you're into mid game, if you get Pridwen, you are going to feel super, super strong. So we can get a little bit nerdy and go into the math a little bit, just if you want to see just how tanky you would be. You go Guardian's Blessing, Reinforced Shoes, Gauntlet of Thebes. You're getting 10 total protections from Guardian's Blessing. You're getting 42 total protections from Reinforced Shoes, so we're at 52. And then you're getting 120 total prots from Thebes. So you're getting 172 protections from these items alone before Pridwen, okay? So that's 172 health, and then you're getting another 80 from Pridwen itself. So you're at, math, 252, right? Yeah, you're at 252 health already, 3 items in, onto your Pridwen. So instead of seeing this item as, you know, just physical and magical protections, it's really doing 200 cooldown or 200 cooldown reduction, 20% cooldown reduction, 40 physical prot, 40 magical prot, and like 250 health. And if you don't go Reinforced Shoes, it's more like 200 health. But anyways, like 200 health and 40 of each prot with 20% CDR is absolutely insane. If you compare this to something like Breastplate of Valor, it's only 100 more gold. It gives you more total prots. It's instead of 65 physical prot, it's 40, but then you get the 40 magical. You get the same amount of CDR, but then you get a slow and a damage effect as well. It is just absolutely insane. And then obviously you get the 200 health on top of it. So it is the most stat efficient item you can get, in my opinion, from third item on. If you decide that you want to do something like Stone of Binding, or you want to get Voidstone because you want to get a little bit more damage in your build, or maybe you want to get an aura item because they have a lot of physical gods and you want to get a sovereignty for your team or a Lotus Crown, that's completely fine. But you could slam Pridwen third every single game after Gauntlet of Thebes and it will never be a bad buy. It is just a super, super good item. And yeah, I pretty much recommend trying to fit it into every single one of your builds. And yeah, I think pretty much every class as well. I think Guardians and Warriors, it's a no-brainer that you want to get in on them. On Assassins, it makes a lot of sense as well. If you do something like Circuit, and you are like diving their backline, your Circuit often a carry, you're getting a shield, it's super hard to kill you, and then if they keep trying to stick to you, or if you're chasing down the enemy because you have a lot of mobility, you're slowing them, you're dealing damage, you're just doing so much stuff. It's really, really strong. Mages, I would say the item is the weakest on, only because you might not be as far into the enemy team as you would be on a frontliner, a traditional frontliner like, you know, an Athena or whatever. So you might not get value out of the damage as much, but I still think it's super strong on mages because mages scale really, really well off of CDR. Getting 20% CDR on something like a Nox is just really insane. Your cooldowns are super short anyways. If you're taking 20% CDR and you're turning the Nox route into an 8-second cooldown, that is just so much CC that you're going to be putting out throughout a team fight. Same thing with Baron. The CDR is going to make you do more healing because you're going to get your 2 up more often. It's going to let you get more roots out. Hell, same thing, more healing. So just even if you don't think you'll get as much value out of the damage portion of this, the CDR alone is going to make this a really, really valuable item for every single support god. And it's just nice to have a 20% CDR item that isn't completely selfish. This is still going to do stuff for your team. So yeah, Pridwen, pretty much insane in my opinion. I can go over a few unique interactions that you might want to be aware of. So first off is something like Terra, right? Because on Terra, you might want to build something like Lotus Crown because you're a healer. Because this effect is going to give you 20 of each prot, you're actually amplifying your Pridwen prot as well. So that's really strong. Same thing would apply with Sylvanas Heal. You could Sylvanas Heal, which will give you protections in its own, and then add Lotus Crown on top of that, and then you can like blink all or do whatever, and the amount of health you're going to get on Sylvanas is just absolutely insane. You could do the same thing with something like Horus. He also has heals and protections on his heal, so you could heal a teammate and then you could ult. The Pridwen proc won't happen until you land, so you pretty much have to ult immediately after doing this. But, you know, same thing, still really strong. I don't know if there's too many other things. There's stuff like Herc where he doesn't benefit from Lotus Crown, obviously. It's not the same thing, but he has in kit 60 of each protection, so you're getting 120 extra health on Pridwen whenever you have your mitigate wounds maxed. Just insane how tanky some of these characters can be made because of the protections in their kit. Another thing to note about Pridwen, and the reason I think Gauntlet of Thebes is so strong with it, is it really favors you going hybrid defense items. So defense items that give you both physical and magical protection. That's something that you really want to aim to build when you have Pridwen. So the obvious one is Gauntlet of Thebes. Another good example would be something like Stone of Binding, a really, really cheap item. It would give you 60 total health. So again, if you have Pridwen in your build, you can kind of think of these items in a new way, where instead of Stone of Binding not giving you any health, it's really giving you 30 power, 30 magical prot, 30 physical prot, and then 60 health because of the protections it has on it. And it's giving the enemy a protection debuff whenever you CC them. This will proc off of your Pridwen proc, off of your slow on Pridwen. So you're going to have more uptime on your Stone of Binding pen. You're getting health from the item. You're getting damage from the item, from the power and the pen, and you're getting prots. Just a super, super efficient and cheap item with Pridwen. I think it's a really big buff to Stone of Binding. So if I were to continue my meta build, I would go Guardian's Blessing, and then Boots, and then Gauntlet of Thebes, and then you could even go Stone of Binding. You could reverse. You could go Stone of Binding after Boots, then you could go Thebes, and then you could go Pridwen. But if you look at a 4-item build and you have Boots, Thebes, Binding, Pridwen, super stat efficient, gives you damage, gives you cooldown, gives you crowd control reduction if you decide to go tank Boots, gives you a ton of health, a ton of procs. I think supports are going to be in a really, really strong spot because of this item. And I think until it gets nerfed, it's pretty much a core item on any support build that you can think of. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully this helped you sort of figure out what to think of Pridwen, how good it is, when to build it, and all that. Again, I haven't gotten to test every single god, so I don't know all of the interactions, but just pay attention to it, test it out for yourself. Again, I wouldn't recommend building it on Fafnir because you don't get it until you're out of your dragon form, but for pretty much any other god, this is a huge buff to the support role, and I just think it's a great item. So definitely go out there, test it, mess around with it, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be putting out a lot more videos like this, and also rank games and just general commentaries to kind of help teach people support. So anyways, that's that, and have a nice day.